The throne room of the HFY Empire was the largest room Princess Velith had ever known. Giant pillars of white crystal reached up to a ceiling so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. The floor was made of polished black stone that reflected everything like a dark mirror. Thousands of lights floated in the air without any wires or holders, casting a soft blue glow over everything. Velith stood at the bottom of the steps that led to her father's throne. Her silver skin caught the light and made her look like she was made of metal. She was tall and thin, with long white hair that fell past her shoulders. Her eyes were the color of deep purple flowers, and right now, those eyes were filled with anger that the High Emperor sat on his throne above her. He was old, even by HFY standards, which meant he had lived for over 2,000 years. His silver skin had turned slightly gray with age, and his eyes had faded to a pale violet. But his voice was still strong when he spoke. "The decision has been made," he said. "You will marry the human commander. This is not a request." Velith felt her hands curl into fists at her sides. She had known this moment was coming. The servants had been whispering about it for days. But hearing the words from her father's mouth made it real in a way that hurt. "Father," she said, keeping her voice as calm as she could, "I understand that we owe the humans a debt. They helped us in the battle. But there must be another way to repay them. Give them land. Give them ships. Give them anything else. Do not give them me." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "The Terran Confederation does not want land or ships. They want an alliance that cannot be broken. They want a bond of blood and family. And they have asked for your hand in marriage to their war hero, Commander Ethan Cole." Velith had heard that name before. Everyone in the Empire had heard it. Ethan Cole was the human who had saved the HFY fleet at the Battle of Nexus Prime, when the Void Swarm had attacked with a force 3 times, larger than expected. The HFY admirals had ordered a retreat, but the human ship had stayed behind. One small ship against an army of enemies. The story said that Ethan Cole had held the line for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant fighting while the HFY fleet escaped to safety. By the time reinforcements arrived, his ship was barely holding together, and more than half his crew was dead. But he had not run. He had not surrendered. Velith had dismissed these stories as lies. Humans were known to exaggerate their accomplishments. They were a young species, barely a few thousand years into space travel. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no telepathy, no armor. They were soft and weak and died after only 80 or 90 years. "I will not marry a creature that will be dead before I finish my first century," Velith said. "Humans are like flowers. They bloom and die in the blink of an eye. What kind of alliance can be built on such a short life?" The Emperor's eyes grew hard. "The humans saved 10,000. HFY lives at Nexus Prime. 10,000 of our people are alive today because one human refused to run away. That is the kind of alliance I want to build." "Then give him a medal," Velith shot back. "Give him a parade. Name a star after him. But do not make me share my life with him." The Emperor stood up from his throne. He was still tall and strong despite his age, and when he raised his voice, it echoed through the entire room like thunder. "You are a princess of the HFY Empire. You have duties that go beyond your personal feelings. The humans are growing stronger every year. Their population spreads across the galaxy like fire. In 200 years, they will outnumber us. In 500 years, they may be more powerful than us. I would rather have them as family than as enemies." Velith felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. HFY did not cry. HFY were strong and proud and ancient. They had ruled their part of the galaxy for 50,000 years. They had seen other species rise and fall like waves on a beach. But humans were different. Humans did not follow the normal rules. They bred faster than any other intelligent species. They adapted to new planets in a single generation. They invented new technologies at a speed that made other species nervous. And they never, ever gave up. "Father," Vela said, her voice barely above a whisper, "please do not do this to me." The Emperor walked down the steps until he stood directly in front of his daughter. He reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. His touch was gentle, but his words were not. "Commander Ethan Cole will arrive at the Crystal Palace in 3 days. You will greet him with respect. You will treat him with kindness. And in 1 month, you will marry him in front of the entire Empire. This is my command." Valeth looked into her father's eyes and saw that there was no room for argument. The decision had been made long before this conversation. She was not being asked for her opinion. She was being told her fate. "As you wish, father," she said. The words tasted like poison in her mouth. She turned and walked out of the throne room, her footsteps echoing on the black stone floor. Servants and guards moved out of her way as she passed. They could see the storm in her eyes, and none of them wanted to be caught in it. When she reached her private chambers, Valeth finally let the tears fall. She stood by her window and looked out at the endless city that spread below the palace. Millions of Kethrani lived in that city, and soon they would all know that their princess was going to marry a human. Some would laugh. Some would feel pity. Some would be angry. But none of them would understand how she felt. None of them would know what it was like to have your future decided by someone else. To be treated like a gift to be given away. Valeth wiped her tears and made a silent promise to herself. She would meet this human commander. She would smile and be polite as her father commanded. But she would make him regret ever coming to her world. She would make his life so difficult that he would beg to break the engagement. Himself, the human, thought he was getting a princess. He was about to learn that he was getting a storm. The Terran shuttle came down from the sky like a silver bird. It was small compared to Kethrani ships, barely large enough to carry 20 people. The metal was scratched and dented in places, showing signs of many battles and many repairs. It was not a beautiful ship. It was a working ship, a ship that had seen hard times and survived them. Valeth watched from a balcony high above the landing platform. She wore her finest dress, a flowing gown of deep purple that matched her eyes. Golden jewelry hung from her neck and wrists. Her white hair had been arranged in an elaborate style that had taken 3 servants 2 hours to complete. She looked like the princess she was supposed to be, but inside, she felt like a prisoner waiting for her jailer. The shuttle door opened with a hiss of steam. A group of humans walked out, blinking in the bright sunlight of the Kethrani homeworld. Most of them wore formal military uniforms, dark blue with silver buttons. They looked around at the crystal towers and floating platforms with wide eyes and open mouths. Valeth had expected them to look impressed. The Crystal Palace was the most beautiful building in the known galaxy. Visitors from 100 different species had come to see it and left with tears in their eyes. Humans were no different. They were just as easily amazed as everyone else. Then she saw him. Ethan Cole was the last person to leave the shuttle. He was taller than the other humans, with shoulders that seemed too wide for his uniform. His hair was dark brown, almost black, but there were lines of gray running through it, even though he could not have been more than 35 years old. His face was serious, with a strong jaw and a straight nose. But it was the scar that caught her attention first. A long, jagged line ran from his left temple down to his jaw. It was pale against his brown skin, a mark that had healed badly and left a permanent reminder. Among the Kethrani, such a scar would be impossible. Their bodies healed perfectly from any wound, leaving no trace behind. To carry a scar like that meant that his species could not fully heal. It meant that every wound they received stayed with them forever, Valeth found herself staring at that scar longer than she intended. She wondered what had caused it. She wondered if it had hurt. She wondered why he had not tried to hide it. The greeting ceremony began below. HFY officials stepped forward to welcome the human delegation. There were speeches and bows and the exchange of formal gifts. Valeth was supposed to join them, but she stayed on her balcony, watching from above like a bird studying prey. Ethan Cole stood straight and still during the long ceremony. He did not fidget or look bored. He listened carefully to each speaker and bowed at the right moments. When it was his turn to speak, his voice carried clearly across the platform. "We come in peace and friendship," he said. His words were simple, not fancy or complicated. "The HFY saved my people many times in the past. At Nexus Prime, we had a chance to return that kindness. We do not ask for anything in exchange for what we did. But we are honored by this offer of marriage and alliance." Valeth felt her lip curl. Of course he was honored. He was a simple military officer being offered a princess. He was moving up in the world. Any human would be happy to accept such a gift. She was about to turn away when something happened that made her stop. A young HFY servant, a boy of perhaps 50 years, was carrying a tray of crystal glasses across the platform. He was nervous in front of so many important people. His hands were shaking. And then he tripped. The tray flew from his hands. The glasses shattered on the ground, sending pieces of crystal flying everywhere. The sound was loud in the sudden silence. Everyone turned to look at the boy, who had fallen to his knees among the broken pieces. 2 HFY guards moved toward the boy immediately. Their faces were hard and angry. Servants who made mistakes in front of important guests were punished harshly. The boy would be beaten, perhaps thrown in prison. That was the law. But before the guards could reach him, Ethan Cole stepped in their way. "Stop," he said. His voice was calm but firm. It was an accident. The guards looked at him with confusion. He was smaller than them, weaker than them. He had no weapons. He had no authority here. Yet he stood in front of them as if he had every right to give orders. "Move aside, human," one of the guards said. "This is not your business." Ethan did not move. "Where I come from, we do not hurt children for making mistakes. If you want to punish someone, punish me." I was standing too close. I made him nervous. The guards looked at each other, unsure what to do. They looked up at the balcony where Valeth was standing. She realized that they were waiting for her to decide. For a long moment, Valeth said nothing. Part of her wanted to let the guards do their job. It would show this human that he had no power here. It would teach him his place. But another part of her, a part she did not want to acknowledge, was watching the way Ethan stood in front of that child. He was ready to be punished himself, to protect a servant he had never met. A servant of a species that was not his own. A servant who meant nothing to him. Why would anyone do that? Valeth raised her hand. "Let the boy go," she said. "Clean up the mess and continue the ceremony." The guards stepped back. The servant boy scrambled to his feet and ran away, tears streaming down his face. Ethan watched him go with something like relief in his eyes. Then he looked up at the balcony. His eyes met Valeth's across the distance. He nodded once, a simple gesture of thanks. Valeth did not nod back. She turned and walked away from the balcony, her heart beating faster than it should. She told herself it meant nothing. The human had just been foolish, not brave. He had risked punishment for no good reason. But as she walked through the empty halls of the palace, she could not stop thinking about the look in his eyes. He had not been afraid of the guards. He had not been showing off for the crowd. He had simply seen a child in danger and moved to help. Perhaps, she thought against her will, this human was not exactly what she had expected, but that did not change anything. She still did not want to marry him. She still planned to make him regret coming here. One small act of kindness did not make up for the fact that she was being sold like property. The wedding was still a month away. She had plenty of time to break him. 2 weeks passed, and Valeth found herself watching Ethan Cole more than she wanted to admit. Every morning, he went to the training grounds to practice with the palace guards. Every morning, he lost. The Kethrani were faster than humans, stronger than humans, and their reflexes were beyond anything a human body could match. A Kethrani warrior could move so quickly that human eyes could not follow. A Kethrani punch could break human bones like dry sticks. Yet every morning, Ethan came back. Valeth stood at the edge of the training ground, hidden behind a pillar, watching another session. The sun was bright and hot, making the sand of the arena shine like gold. 5 Kethrani guards circled around Ethan, their training swords ready. He stood in the center, breathing hard. His shirt was torn and dirty. There was blood on his lip from an earlier hit. Blue bruises were forming on his arms and chest. But he held his wooden sword steady and waited for the next attack. The first guard moved so fast that he seemed to disappear. One moment he was standing still. The next moment he was behind Ethan, his sword swinging toward the human's back. Ethan tried to turn and block, but he was too slow. The sword hit his shoulder with a crack that echoed across the arena. Ethan fell to his knees. The watching guards laughed. But before the laughter died, he was standing again. His face was twisted with pain, but his feet were planted firmly on the ground. Again, he said. The guards looked at each other with surprise. Most foreigners who trained with them gave up after the first day. Some gave up after the first hour. No one had ever kept coming back for 2 weeks of daily beatings. "You cannot win, human," one of the guards said. There was almost respect in his voice. "We are too fast for you. Too strong. Why do you keep trying?" Ethan wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "I am not trying to win," he said. "I am trying to learn. There is a difference." The training continued. Valeth watched as Ethan was knocked down again and again. Each time, he got back up. Each time, he tried something slightly different. He was studying them, she realized. He was watching how they moved, how they attacked, how they thought. He knew he could not beat them, but he was learning from every defeat. It was, she had to admit, impressive in a strange way. When the session ended, the guards helped Ethan walk to the edge of the arena. They were no longer laughing at him. One of them even clapped him on the back, a gesture of friendship among Kethrani warriors. Ethan winced at the touch, but managed to smile. Valeth stepped out from behind her pillar. The guards saw her and immediately stood at attention, their faces turning serious. Ethan looked up and saw her too. He tried to stand straighter, but his body was too beaten to cooperate. "Princess," he said, bowing his head. "I did not know you were watching." "I was curious," she said, walking closer to him. "I wanted to see if the famous hero of Nexus Prime was as impressive in person as the stories say." There was a challenge in her words. She was mocking him, and they both knew it. But Ethan did not rise to the bait. "The stories are exaggerated," he said simply. "I am just a man who got lucky." "Lucky?" Valeth raised an eyebrow. "You held off an entire Void Swarm fleet for 6 hours. You saved 10,000 Kethrani lives. You call that luck?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. 212 people died under my command that day. Good people. Brave people. They trusted me to bring them home, and I failed them." He looked down at his hands. "I do not feel like a hero. I feel like a man who made a decision that cost too many lives." Valeth had not expected this. She had expected him to brag about his victory, to take pride in his famous battle. Instead, he talked about the people he had lost. The weight of their deaths was still visible in his eyes. "Then why did you stay?" She asked, "Why not retreat with our fleet? You would have been safe." Ethan looked up at her. His brown eyes met her violet ones without fear or shame. "Because retreating would have meant leaving your ships to be destroyed. The Void Swarm would have caught up with them before they reached safety. 10,000 of your people would have died." He paused. "My crew voted to leave. They wanted to run. But I could not abandon people who needed help. That is not who I am." "So you sacrificed your crew for strangers?" "No," Ethan shook his head. "I gave my crew a choice. I told them that I was staying, and anyone who wanted to leave could take the escape pods. Not one person left. They chose to stay with me. They chose to fight." His voice broke slightly. "They were the bravest people I have ever known." Valith did not know what to say. She had spent 2 weeks looking for reasons to hate this man. She had wanted him to be arrogant, selfish, and cruel. She had wanted to find flaws that would justify her anger. Instead, she found a man who blamed himself for the deaths of his crew. A man who trained every day with enemies he could not beat. A man who protected children he did not know. A man who spoke of bravery not as a quality he had, but as a quality he admired in others. "You confuse me," she admitted. Ethan smiled, even though it clearly hurt his split lip. "I confuse myself sometimes. But I have learned that confusion is better than certainty. Certain people stop learning. Confused people keep asking questions." He turned and began walking slowly toward the palace, his body stiff with pain. The guards moved to help him, but he waved them away. He wanted to walk on his own, even if it took him twice as long. Valith watched him go. Her feelings were a tangled mess inside her chest. She still did not want this marriage. She still did not want her future decided by others. But she was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, Ethan Cole was not the enemy she had imagined. He was something else entirely. And that scared her more than any enemy ever could. The wedding was 3 days away when the assassins came. Valith was alone in her chambers, standing by the window and looking out at the night sky. 2 moons hung low over the city, casting silver light over the crystal towers. She could not sleep. Her mind was too full of thoughts about the wedding, about her father, about Ethan Cole. Over the past weeks, her feelings had changed in ways she did not understand. She had stopped looking for reasons to hate the human. She had started looking forward to their conversations. She had even smiled once when he made a joke, though she had hidden it quickly, but she still did not know if she could marry him. She still did not know if she could share her life with someone so different from herself. Humans live such short lives. In 100 years, Ethan would be dead, and she would still have thousands of years left to live alone. A sound interrupted her thoughts. It was soft, barely louder than a whisper. The sound of a window opening somewhere in the palace. Valith turned, her senses suddenly alert. The palace was protected by the best security in the Empire. No one could enter without permission. But something felt wrong. The air itself seemed to grow cold and heavy. The door to her chamber exploded inward. 12 figures rushed through the opening, moving with the speed of trained Kethrani warriors. They wore black armor that absorbed light, making them look like living shadows. Their faces were hidden behind masks. In their hands, they carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Assassins. Someone had sent assassins to kill her. Valith did not waste time being surprised. She had been trained in combat since she was a child. Her body moved before her mind could think, grabbing a decorative sword from the wall and swinging it at the nearest attacker. The blade cut through his armor and bit into his chest. He fell with a scream. But there were 11 more, and they were already surrounding her. She fought with everything she had. Her sword flashed in the moonlight, blocking attacks and striking back. She killed 2 more assassins, then a third. Her purple dress was torn and splattered with blue blood. Her hair had come loose and was flying around her face like a white storm. But they were too many. For everyone she knocked down, 2 more took his place. A blade cut across her arm, drawing a line of pain. A fist struck her face, making her vision blur. She stumbled backward, trying to keep her balance. Then someone fired a neural disruptor at her. The weapon sent waves of energy into her brain, overloading her nervous system. Valith felt her body go limp. She fell to her knees, unable to move, unable to fight. The sword dropped from her fingers and clattered on the floor. The lit assassin walked toward her. He removed his mask, revealing a face she recognized. Lord Kethros, one of her father's advisors. A man who had always smiled at her in the throne room, who had bowed and spoken sweet words. "Forgive me, princess," he said, drawing a long knife. "But this alliance with the humans must be stopped. Your death will be blamed on them, and the Empire will go to war. It is the only way to protect our people from the human threat." He raised the knife. Above her head dot, and then the window behind him shattered into 1,000 pieces. Ethan Cole came through, the broken glass like a falling star. He had no armor. He was wearing simple sleeping clothes, his feet bare on the cold floor. In his hands, he carried only a small pistol and a combat knife. He crashed into 2 assassins, knocking them to the ground. Before they could recover, he shot both of them in the chest. Then he rolled to the side, barely avoiding a sword that would have taken off his head. "Human fool," Lord Kethros spat. "You cannot fight us. We are Kethrani. You are nothing." Ethan did not answer. He was too busy fighting for his life. The remaining assassins turned on him, forgetting about Valith. She watched from the floor, still unable to move as Ethan faced 7 enemies alone. He was slower than them. He was weaker than them. He had no chance of winning, but he did not run. A sword cut across his shoulder, drawing blood. Ethan grunted in pain but kept fighting. He shot another assassin, then stabbed his knife into a third. A fist hit his face, breaking his nose. He staggered but did not fall. The fight was brutal and ugly. Ethan took wound after wound. Blood poured from his shoulder, his chest, his arms. One of the assassins grabbed his arm and twisted. Valith heard the bone break with a sickening crack. Ethan screamed, but he switched the knife to his other hand and kept fighting. He killed another assassin. Then another. Lord Kethros backed away, his eyes wide with disbelief. This human should have died within the first minute. He should have been cut to pieces. But he was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. Finally, only Lord Kethros remained. Ethan stood in front of him, barely able to stay on his feet. His broken arm hung uselessly at his side. His body was covered in wounds. His breathing was harsh and wet, suggesting that something was broken inside his chest. But his eyes were still sharp, still alive, still burning with determination. "Surrender," Ethan said, his voice rough with pain. "You do not have to die tonight." Lord Kethros laughed bitterly. "You can barely stand, human. What makes you think you can stop me?" "I do not need to stand," Ethan replied. "I just need to last long enough for the guards to arrive. And I can do that. I promise you, I can do that." As if summoned by his words, the sound of running feet echoed through the hallways. Palace guards burst into the room, their weapons ready. They saw the dead assassins, the wounded human, and the princes on the floor. Lord Kethros tried to run, but he did not get far. The guards caught him before he reached the door. Ethan looked at Valith one last time. His eyes were starting to lose focus. His body was finally giving up. "Are you safe?" He whispered. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Good," he said. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the floor. Valith found her voice as the neural disruption began to wear off. "Save him," she screamed at the guards. "Do not let him die. Do whatever it takes. Save him." The medics rushed in, lifting Ethan onto a stretcher. They worked quickly, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to keep his heart beating. Valith watched them carry him away, her body shaking with fear and something else, something that felt like the beginning of love. Ethan spent 2 weeks in a healing pod. The Kathrani medical technology was far beyond anything humans had. Wounds that would have taken months to heal on Earth were repaired in days. Broken bones were grown back together. Damaged organs were rebuilt cell by cell. It was a miracle of science that would have amazed any human doctor. But even with all this technology, the medics were not sure Ethan would survive. He had lost too much blood. His body had been pushed past its breaking point. Several times during the first few days, his heart stopped, and the machines had to bring him back. Valith visited every day. She would sit beside the healing pod, looking at Ethan through the clear glass. He looked peaceful when he slept, younger than he did when he was awake. The scar on his face was fading as the machines worked to heal it. Soon it would be gone completely, erased as if it had never existed. But Valith found herself hoping the scar would remain. It was part of who he was. It was a reminder of all the battles he had survived, all the pain he had endured. Removing it felt like erasing a piece of his history. The days passed slowly. Valith talked to Ethan, even though he could not hear her. She told him about her childhood, about her dreams, about her fears. She told him things she had never told anyone else. Somehow, it was easier to be honest with someone who could not respond. She told him about the first time she saw him step in front of those guards to protect the servant boy. She told him about watching him train day after day, getting beaten down and standing back up. She told him about the night he crashed through her window and fought 7 assassins with a broken arm and a knife. "You are the strangest person I have ever met," she said softly. "You are weak in all the ways my people value strength. But you are strong in ways we have forgotten. You make me question everything I thought I knew." On the 14th day, Ethan opened his eyes. Valith was sitting beside the pod when it happened. She saw his fingers twitch first, then his eyelids flutter. Then his brown eyes were looking at her, confused but alive. "Princess," he said. His voice was rough from 2 weeks of silence. "You are here." "Of course I am here," she said, trying to sound calm even though her heart was racing. "You saved my life. It would be rude not to visit." Ethan smiled weakly. "How long was I asleep?" 2 weeks. The medics said you almost died several times. They said no human should have survived those wounds." She paused. "They also said that your stubborn refusal to die is the most annoying thing they have ever seen." He laughed, then winced as the movement hurt his still healing body. "Humans are good at refusing to die. It is one of our few talents." The healing pod opened, and medics rushed in to check on Ethan. Valith stepped back and watched them work. They tested his reflexes, checked his wounds, asked him questions. After an hour, they declared that he would make a full recovery. When the medics left, Valith returned to his bedside. She had something important to tell him, and she did not want to wait any longer. "The wedding has been canceled," she said. Ethan's face changed. For just a moment, she saw disappointment flash across his features before he hid it. "I understand," he said quietly. "After what happened, I am sure your father wants to end the alliance with Earth. I will return to my people as soon as I am able to travel." "You misunderstand me," Valith said quickly. "My father did not cancel the wedding." "I did." Ethan looked at her with confusion. "Then I really do not understand." Valith took a deep breath. This was the hardest thing she had ever done. Kathrani princesses did not ask for things. They commanded. They demanded. They took what they wanted without asking permission. But Ethan had taught her that there were other ways to be strong. I canceled the arranged wedding because I do not want to marry someone I was forced to marry, she said. I want to do this the right way. The human way. She felt her silver cheeks grow warm with embarrassment. Among your people, I believe there is a tradition of spending time together before making a commitment. Eating meals. Having conversations. Learning about each other. Ethan stared at her with wide eyes. Princess, are you asking me on a date? I am informing you that I have chosen to explore the possibility of a relationship with you, she said stiffly. If you are interested in such an arrangement. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. It was the warmest smile she had ever seen. Princess Valith of the Kethrani Empire, he said. I would be honored to have dinner with you. Or lunch, or breakfast. Or all three, if you are willing. Despite herself, Valith smiled back. Do not push your luck, human. One meal at a time. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm against her cool silver skin. It felt strange, holding hands with a human. Strange, but not unpleasant. Why did you do it? She asked quietly. Why did you fight for me when you knew you would probably die? Ethan thought about the question before answering. Because some things are more important than survival. Because I could not stand by and watch someone I care about be hurt. He squeezed her hand gently. And because I wanted you to have a choice. Even if you never wanted me, you deserve the chance to decide your own future. Valith felt tears pricking at her eyes again. She had spent weeks building walls around her heart, telling herself that this human meant nothing to her. But Ethan had torn down those walls without even trying. He had shown her that strength was not about power or speed or long life. It was about sacrifice. It was about standing up for what mattered, even when you knew you could not win. My people have lived for 50,000 years, she said. We have built empires and conquered stars. We thought we knew everything about strength and honor and courage. But you have taught us something we had forgotten. What is that? Ethan asked. That true strength is not about winning. It is about choosing to fight for something, even when victory is impossible. It is about standing up when it would be easier to stay down. It is about protecting others, even when it costs you everything. Valith leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. A Kethrani gesture of deep affection. My father wanted this alliance to happen through politics and treaties, she said. But I think something better has happened instead. Something that will last longer than any document or agreement. What is that? Ethan asked again. Valith smiled. Love, human. I am starting to fall in love with you. I have a feeling that this is only the beginning. Outside the window, the twin moons were rising over the Crystal Palace. A new night was beginning, and with it, a new future for both their peoples. Not an alliance built on obligation or fear, but a bond built on respect, understanding, and the strange. Wonderful power of human stubbornness, thought the princess, who had said no to the wedding, had finally found something worth saying yes to. And across the galaxy, humans and Kethrani alike would remember this moment as the day everything changed.